What's up, you? How are you doing? Today we're back for a video on how to start digital art on a budget. I'm a big fan of digital art for reasons that you'll see later on, okay? So, as I said earlier, it's gonna be a video on how to start digital art on a budget. Whether or not you want to buy digital stuff, like to have new tools and gadgets to play with and maybe reignite your love for art, or you just decided that you want to go professional and you decided that, well, a digital tablet and just having your setup totally digital is the way to go for you, I'm gonna be helping you today to set all that up on the cheap. If you're watching this, I assume that you already know somewhat why you want to do it. But why should you digital art? Well, for me specifically, there are three main reasons: price, versatility, and convenience. Okay? So when we talk about price, how the fuck is that more cheap than just using paper and pencil? Well, it's not. It's that simple. Nothing can beat simple pencil to paper. For all the reasons I mentioned before, price, versatility, convenience, pencil to paper beats pretty much everything. The thing is, as soon as you try to expand on that, like you want to ink, you want to color, you want to paint, all of that, you'll need to increase the amount of money you'll have to invest into that. And obviously you can buy cheap, decent quality colored pencils for like 20-30 bucks depending on where you look at. But as soon as you try to get like good quality pens for inking or Copics for coloring with markers, it can easily get more expensive than just getting a graphic tablet. Okay, so there's that. Obviously, art can be as expensive as you want it to be. If you wanted to, you could definitely buy a $3,000 tablet. But you don't need that. You don't have to do that. Then how about versatility? Well, obviously versatility applies when you're talking about just painting and all that. Because obviously you wouldn't be really able to paint at school, to paint in the study room or something. And for these things, even I, who's a big advocate for digital art, will just use a pencil paper. Like to draw on the go, I use paper pencil. But when we talk versatility about like just art, in my room for example, I put that tablet, I open the software, and I have everything accessible to me. I got markers, I got pens, I got ink, I got paint, I got pencils and all that, obviously digitally, but I can essentially play with all of that and get a similar effect to all of that in one simple tool. Okay? So one thing does a lot of things and does them well. Like if you ever saw digital pieces, they look fucking great, like crazy great. So in one tool, one convenient tool, you get a whole ass array of just tools and methods and workflows you can try to just make art more fun. Whereas if I buy a $100 box of Copics, well, the only thing I can do with it is color stuff, which is good. Like Copics art is great, awesome, beautiful. I'm not saying the opposite, but it's kind of expensive. And then finally there's convenience. I don't like cleaning up. So the less cleaning up I have to do, the better I feel, the better I am. And with a graphic tablet, you just plug your shit, take your stylus, draw, and when you're done, put it back in the counter or like wherever you want to put it. Okay? So no cleaning up, everything at your disposal, and it's just great. Obviously there are some things you're gonna have to get used to, not necessarily weaknesses. Stuff like drawing on a graphic tablet won't feel the same as drawing on paper. That's just a given. It's not the same thing. And for me, it's not a problem, it's just different. But for some people, they just can't get used to that. So there's that to consider. We can now really get into the subject matter of this video: how to get into digital art for cheap. Let me preface this, and this is more of a bonus point than anything. If you really want to get into digital art for the cheap, like cheap, a phone stylus is pretty much unbeatable. And that's assuming, obviously, you already have a phone. So if you really want to go in for the cheap, a phone plus $15 stylus will allow you to play your hand, try your hand at digital art. Obviously, don't fool yourself. It's not gonna be the best experience at all, but you can still create fucking great art. First thing first, you're gonna need a laptop or a PC. Obviously, you could just go with the iPad Pro route, but while you could do that, I wouldn't really recommend it because we're talking budget. The iPad Pro is pretty expensive. The stylus to go with it is pretty expensive. I think the stylus by itself is more expensive than most graphic tablets, and that's not even considering the iPad and all that. Obviously, you'd get some benefits along the fact that, well, first, you'll be able to draw directly on the screen, and you can use an iPad for a lot of stuff. So if you already have an iPad Pro, then it might be more convenient for you to just get a stylus in. But for the rest of you, you'll need a PC or laptop. You don't need something crazy. You don't need something expensive. Like, for the record, all of my digital art has been done on a laptop that costed like less than $300 on Amazon, and that's Canadian. And obviously it's not the best. Like, this thing will ram sometimes when I'm trying to like draw with too big a brush on a too big of a canvas and all that. But it's much more than enough to just do art. Obviously, if you do something more akin to 3D animation, you might need something a bit beefier. But even then, you'll be able to do most things, just rendering might take longer. But if you're not disturbed by that, if it's not a problem, you can easily look for cheap laptops on Amazon for like $300 or something and get a decent deal on them. So now that we got the laptop, the PC, the actual machine to run it, how do we actually draw? Well, if you wanted to really go budget, I guess you could actually stop here, because like, you could technically draw with mouse, and if you are one of these people that draw with mouses and stuff, you're a god. I don't make the rules, sorry, you're just a god. But, for most people, for most regular human beings like us, you'll need a graphic tablet, okay? And there are two types of graphic tablets. They're essentially what I thought was a graphic tablet before I got into it, which are actually graphic monitors, which are basically just monitors, yes, you hook up to an actual computer and on which you'll actually draw. Okay, so they're basically touch screens that you'll use to make your art with Windows, Linux, or whatever you use. Okay. They tend to be pretty expensive. Like with Huion and Gaumon entering the fray a few years back, prices for monitors of that kind of went back a bit, but they're still kind of expensive. I think the least expensive I saw was like around $500 or something. So it's not given, and for like 99.9% of artists, you won't need that. Okay, for 99.9% of people, the traditional actual graphic tablets, which are basically just glorified trackpads with a stylus, will be more than enough. Okay, so my guy or my girl, I don't know who you are, don't break the bank on a tablet. Okay, you can easily get a good graphic tablets that'll be perfect to like just get started into it, and not even just get started, just get good with digital art for sub $100, and that's in Canadian again, so even less for freedom money. And as the saying goes, tools don't make art, the artist does. Buying a $3,000 graphic tablet, like a $3,000 Cintiq, won't make you a better artist if you're scrub, okay? And you're probably gonna be scrubbed anyway when you start digital art anyway, even if you have some experience, because you won't be used to the feeling of drawing digital at first, unless you're a genius like me. But even then, don't break the bank on that shit. Okay, you can get. I'm a bit biased towards Huion, to be honest, because they're pretty much the only tablets ever I bought. Because when I started getting into digital art, they were pretty much the only competitors to Wacom, and they offer like great specs for little money. And they got, like, right now they made a name for themselves. A lot of people are like switching over from Wacom to Huion, so they're not shit. Like, they're really the shit. Good quality shit. And on Amazon, for example, link in bio, you can get a H1060p for 80 to 90 bucks Canadian, depending on the period. Okay, and with that you'll get like over 8,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, good working area for drawing, a few express keys for like Control Z and this kind of stuff, and just a good overall tablet. Really popular. You can look the reviews and stuff. If you've got a bit less money, you can go with the X640p, which you can get for roughly $60 right now. A bit more, a bit less if you wait. And the thing that's really dope is that pretty much all Huion recent tablets ship out with a battery-free pen, which is fucking great. Then on Amazon still, there's the Vake A15, which also got pretty good reviews if you don't want to go with Huion for whatever reason. Their prices are hovering pretty much in the same range as the two tablets I mentioned before. Cause for some reason their base price like 100 something, but sometimes they'll go below 60s, but we don't care about that. What's important is the spec for the price. Probably heard of Wacom. Wacom are well built from what I've heard. But the thing is, Wacom, for the same prices as Huion and other alternatives, will pretty much always charge you like 50 to 100 to even more than that, more than just buying the alternative. And honestly, for me, Wacom is kind of the Apple of the graphic tablet world. Okay, they got good products, like decent products, but at this point, you're kind of paying for the name. So, now you got your PC, laptop that for most of you I assume you didn't even have to buy. Then you got your tablet, which is extremely important, but now you'll need a software. Because right now everything you got is pretty much a brick, except for like being able to game, call, work, write, and all that. But a brick when we talk digital art, okay? You'll need actual software to do all that. And visual art is like pretty vast. There's 3D, there's painting, art, animation, and all that. If you want to stay in the realm of budget, or even want to consider like paid options, and I've tested many of them, among which Clip Studio Paint, Photoshop, Paint Tool Sai, Corel Paint, GIMP, Fire Alpaca. Well, for me, Krita is pretty much the top of everything when it comes to like just hard painting, animation. Well, animation not that much, but for animation not that much. Clip Studio Paint does it well too, and there are a lot of better programs for that. But Krita is just fantastic at everything. And Blender, while I seldom do 3D, it's a great program with a big track record of like professional work. And as long as you learn how to use it, you can do pretty much everything with it. So I wouldn't waste money on Maya or something, unless you're trying to like go with the industry standard. But even then, you can do pretty much everything with Krita and Blender. If you want a feel for it, like a description of it, Krita is pretty much a Photoshop clone, but geared exclusively towards artists. Okay? Because like calling it a Photoshop clone is kind of unfair, even though it kind of started as that at first. But right now it's like pretty much Photoshop, but with artist support. And totally free and open, so like you can add every feature you would want to add if you have some knowledge in programming. Okay, so it's really a great program. I especially love the colorize feature, which allows you to lay your flats in like seconds, which is fucking great. Obviously it's not perfect, sometimes you'll have some cleanup to do, but like it's still much easier than selecting one by one different areas and then coloring that. When you talk 3D, again, Blender is great. There are plenty of comparative videos on YouTube of Blender versus 3ds Max, or Blender versus Maya, or Blender versus something else. And honestly, you can pretty much always chalk it down to Blender is free, Maya is great, Maya is paid, Blender is perfect for a hobbyist, Maya is the industry standard, both are great. Just go with Blender. Now you got laptop or PC, you got your tablet, you got the software, which if you follow my recommendation, you didn't pay anything for. I mean, Krita or Blender, I wouldn't recommend piracy. And some big, dreamy, moisty highs. However, don't fool yourself, my guy or my girl. Digital art is not easy. If you've never tried digital art, unless you're natural, you probably will struggle for the first few weeks to get used to like just drawing digital. And digital art is a totally new workflow. Like you're gonna be playing with layers, blending modes, and just a whole flurry of options and tools you wouldn't even imagine to use in traditional. Digital art is like great, and you're gonna be spending a lot of time like just learning the software you chose to make your workflow as efficient as possible. So with all that said, like don't expect to become a Wallop or Guaze overnight. Have realistic expectations. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying don't chastise yourself if you don't get as good as like Wallop, Guaze or other professionals by the end of the year or something. It takes time and consistency. So stay patient, stay consistent, and love yourself. Take care of yourself in the sense that like if every day you try to sit at the desk for like an hour or more drawing, you'll probably burn yourself out. Okay, some people manage to do that. I don't know how they do that, but in my case, I burned out. And like when it happened, it was so bad that I wouldn't draw for months because I was just looking at hard supply made me want to puke. So with that said, we are done. You now got a good, decent setup that you can use to do good, great, fantastical digital art. Okay? So with that said, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for further content on digital art, and just stuff like that. Another video coming, I don't know yet. This YouTube thing is kind of new to me. Thanks for watching, and with that said,